Two children emerge from a pit in the ground. Their skin is green. They speak no known language. They refuse to eat anything except raw beans. And no one, not a single person in the village of Woolpit, England, has any idea where they came from. It's harvest season, sometime around 1150 AD. Suffolk is a prosperous county deep in the English countryside. The fields are golden, the workers are busy, and the last thing anyone expects to pull out of a wolf pit is a pair of terrified, green-skinned children clutching each other and weeping in a language nobody has ever heard. The boy is younger, more frail. The girl is older, more alert. Both are dressed strangely. Both are completely undeniably green. Not pale, not sickly yellow, green, like spring grass, like unripe wheat. The workers stare. The children stare back. Someone runs for the local lord, Sir Richard de Calme, and within hours, the two most mysterious children in medieval England are sitting in his manor house, surrounded by bewildered nobles who can offer them bread, meat, fruit, and watch them refuse every single bite. Days pass. The boy grows weaker. He never adapts. He never eats. He dies, quietly, without ever explaining where he came from or why his skin looks like something out of a fairy tale. But the girl survives. Slowly, tentatively, she begins eating normal food. And as she does, something extraordinary happens. Her green color starts to fade. Within months, she looks like any other English girl. She learns the language. She gets baptized. She's given a name, Agnes. And then Agnes starts to talk. What she says is either the most fascinating historical testimony of the medieval era or a carefully constructed myth. She tells her new community that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a land with no sun, she says. Everything there is twilight. The light is like what you'd see just after sunset, perpetual, dim, and green-tinged. She says the people there are Christian. She says she doesn't know how she got to Woolpit. She and her brother were following some cattle, she recalls, when they heard a loud rushing sound, like bells, and then suddenly they were here, in the light, in the pit, in a world they didn't recognize. Here's where historians split into two camps that have been arguing for nearly 9 centuries. The first camp says this is a fairy story. Medieval chroniclers like Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh, who both documented this story within decades of the event, were writing in a culture saturated with folklore about underground peoples, otherworldly visitors, and the thin boundary between this world and the next. The green children fit neatly into that tradition, and the story probably grew in the telling. But here's the thing. Ralph of Coggeshall wasn't some gullible peasant spinning yarns by a fire. He was the abbot of Coggeshall Abbey, one of the most educated men in England. He had no obvious reason to fabricate a story about green children, and crucially, he writes about it like it actually happened, not as allegory, not as metaphor, as a strange, documented fact that he was told by credible witnesses. The second camp, the one that's gotten considerably more interesting in the last century, says Agnes was telling the truth, just not about what we think. St. Martin's Land, they argue, isn't another dimension. It's a real place with a real name, Fornham St. Martin, a village just a few miles from Woolpit. And the green color? That's not magic, that's malnutrition, specifically a condition called hypochromic anemia, a severe iron deficiency that can turn skin a distinctly greenish hue. It was so common in medieval England among the malnourished poor that it had a name, green sickness. Here's what nobody tells you about 12th century Suffolk. It was a region being actively torn apart by one of England's most brutal civil wars. The period known as the Anarchy, the war between King Stephen and Empress Matilda, had devastated rural communities across England throughout the 1130s and 40s. Villages burned, crops were seized, entire families vanished. Orphaned children wandering the countryside, malnourished and traumatized, speaking dialects so regional they were almost incomprehensible to outsiders. That wasn't mythology, that was Tuesday. One compelling modern theory, developed by historian Derek Brewer and later expanded by others, proposes that the children may have been Flemish immigrants, part of a significant Flemish population brought to England by Henry I to boost the wool trade. Thousands of Flemish workers settled in Suffolk specifically. When political winds shifted under King Stephen, anti-Flemish sentiment turned violent. Many were massacred. Children orphaned by that violence may have fled into the forests, living underground or in caves, surviving on whatever they could find, including, apparently, a lot of raw beans. A subterranean existence plus severe anemia plus a dialect of Flemish that sounded alien to English ears, and suddenly you have your green children from another world. But notice what that theory reveals. These were economic refugees. People imported to generate profit for the English crown, then abandoned and killed when they were no longer convenient. The Flemish weavers of Suffolk built an industry worth millions in modern terms. Their labor made fortunes. Their deaths made no headlines. The children they left behind became a mystery rather than an indictment. That pattern, exploit a population, discard them, then transform their suffering into folklore, is not a medieval problem, it's a human problem. We still do it. We still import labor, extract its value, then criminalize its desperation when the arrangement stops being profitable. The green children of Woolpit haunt us not because they were alien, they haunt us because they were abandoned. Agnes, for her part, apparently lived a fairly normal life after her transformation. Medieval records suggest she married, had children, and was known, with a kind of medieval bluntness, for being rather loose and wanton in her conduct. She survived. She adapted. She never, as far as we know, found out what happened to her parents, or why she'd been left to wander into a pit in Suffolk with a dying little brother and no one who spoke her language. The real horror of the green children isn't their color, it's the world that produced them. A world where children fall into pits and no one knows their names, where trauma gets repackaged as legend, where the powerful build wealth on invisible labor, and the only trace those people leave behind is a story so strange that we spend 9 centuries arguing whether they were from another planet, instead of asking why they were alone in the first place. So here's the question I'll leave you with. How many modern mysteries are actually just poverty with a good marketing budget? How many unexplained stories are really just the evidence of people we decided didn't deserve an explanation? If this story made you think, drop your theory in the comments. Were the green children survivors, immigrants, or something we still can't explain? And if you want more history that tells you what they left out of the textbooks, you know what to do.